So today we are going to talk about thunderstorms and tornadoes, and then we're going to get into hurricanes. So like I said, we're going to have two separate PowerPoints, so I'll switch between them. They're not super long, and then there's notes that go with each, and then I will set you loose to do your activities. Sound good? All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about are thunderstorms. Okay, and thunderstorms are a violent weather event that's accompanied by lightning, thunder, strong winds, and rain. We've had some pretty wicked thunderstorms this past summer, right? There are about 4,000 thunderstorms per day worldwide. So thunderstorms form when warm, humid air rises into colder air in an unstable environment. So warm, humid air, remember we talked about that humidity? Did anybody look at, well, you had to look at the PowerPoint to fill in your notes, but what happens when it's humid? What would Mrs. Ibarra's hair look like? What? Puffy, yeah. I'd look like I had hair out to here, right? So these usually occur in the late afternoon or early evening. So there are two kinds of thunderstorms, cold front and warm air. The cold front thunderstorm is when warm air is pushed up and over the cold air. So pushed up and over, okay? They are strong and last for several hours. They mostly occur in the spring and fall, and they can also have tornadoes and hail. What's hail? Yes, big ice balls, right? They could do lots of damage, right? Okay. That looks pretty crazy, huh? All right, the next one is warm air thunderstorm. This doesn't involve cold air at all, obviously, given the name, warm air. This is caused by uneven heating of Earth's surface. They are less violent and they typically last less than an hour. And these occur mostly in the summer, okay? So warm air is the what? Warm air is the what? Summer, thank you. Okay, so most thunderstorms occur in three stages: cumulus, mature, and dissipating. Okay, cumulus are strong updrafts that blow warm, moist air higher until the vapor condenses, forming cumulus clouds. Okay, mature are violently rising warm air forming cumulonimbus clouds. So updrafts continue and downdrafts begin as rain starts to fall. That's why you see all the arrows. So you see the arrows going up, and then you see them shifting out and then down, okay? This is when thunder and lightning begin. Dissipating is strong downdrafts stop warm, moist air currents from rising. Okay, so water vapor supply suddenly decreases, so the cell dies down. So if the storm passes over new areas of warm water, the new cells can begin again. So strong downdrafts stop the warm, moist air currents from actually rising. Because we said yesterday that warm air does what? And cold air sinks. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is lightning. So what actually causes lightning? So as your updrafts carry air into the cloud, different charges separate in the cloud. Okay, so when we're talking about charges, that's what we see when the lightning is striking. Okay, so there's negative charges near the bottom and positive charges near the top. So we talked about charges when we talked about atoms Okay, we talked about neutrons, protons, electrons. So the negative charges will rush toward the ground. At the same time, the positive charges near the ground rise toward the cloud. So positive up here, negative down here. So when they meet, that's when a lightning bolt will occur. Okay? So negative goes towards the what? Toward the ground, right? And the positives that are near the ground do what? They rise up. Okay, so when they meet, that's when the lightning will strike. So this is a picture of what actually happens. So you see the region of positive charge and the region of negative charge. And then down near the ground, you see what? What type of charge is this? Positive, right? So when they meet, positive, negative, what do you see happening? The what? What do you see? What are those? Lightning, okay? So when the positive and negative meet, that's when the lightning you will see, okay? The next thing is thunder, okay? Thunder is the extreme heat from lightning that causes air to expand and collapse, resulting in a loud noise. So thunder is when you hear those big booms, right? So the air expands faster than the speed of sound and creates a sonic boom. Who has pets in here? Anybody pets? Dogs? Do your dogs like thunder? No. What do? They what? They go in the bed? Under the bed. They hide under the bed. So I have one dog who absolutely hates thunder and the other two could care less. Okay? But he hates that booming sound. And he will bark and bark and bark because he thinks he can get it. All right, next are tornadoes. Tornadoes are rapidly spinning columns of air that have high winds, low pressure, and they touch the ground. Okay? The center of a tornado is characterized by its low pressure. So they swirl, 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 and they move along the ground. Okay? So how to form a tornado? The first thing you have to do is create horizontal rolling winds. The rolling winds hit an updraft and start to tilt upward. Then the rotating winds are now in clouds. So that's what you start to see. And then they can touch down and form a tornado. Anybody ever seen an actual tornado? No? You did? You saw one? Kinda? Say what? Yeah. You ever seen a tornado? No? Me neither. But I will tell you a story, a brief one. So where I'm from in Pennsylvania, a tornado came through, and the tornado took out buildings upon buildings, did lots of damage, and there was a tent, you know, like the tents that you would see that would sell flowers or fireworks, like a stand. Y'all know what I'm talking about? The tent was still standing, but it took buildings, pieces of buildings, gone, and the tent was still standing. It was crazy. Anyway, that's my story. All right. So up here is a picture of Tornado Alley. So this is South Central and Midwestern states in the United States. This is where Tornado Alley is. So not that tornadoes can't happen anywhere else, but this is the most common area for a tornado to happen. So mid-northern Texas, the west side of Oklahoma and Kansas, the eastern side of Colorado, the majority of Nebraska, a good chunk of Iowa, southern Minnesota, and southeastern South Dakota, okay? So this is just talking about tornado intensity, so how intense tornadoes can actually be. They go from an EF0 to an EF5. So when we're talking about EF, we're talking about the, anybody know what that is? Anybody ever heard of it? Fujita Tornado Intensity Scale, okay? So like Fuji top. Nothing. All right. I'm thinking about that tropical island, you know. All right, so this is how they measure how much damage is done by the tornado and the actual wind speed. So sometimes tornadoes can come through and do very minimal damage, and sometimes they can come through and wreak a lot of havoc, okay? So here's just a big picture of the scale. It gives you wind speeds in the first column, miles per hour. Then it gives you the relative frequency over here. And then this is the potential damage that can be done. And then obviously the last picture shows you what the damage can actually look like. So when we hear things on the news about a tornado, okay, we hear tornado watch and we hear tornado warnings. So tornado watches are the conditions that are conducive to the development of tornadoes in and close to the watch area. So this is over a large area and it can last 3 to 5 hours. A warning, on the other hand, means that a tornado has been sighted by spotters or it's indicated on radar and is occurring or imminent in the warning area. So this happens in a smaller area and lasts 30 minutes to an hour. So which one do you think is worse? The watch or the warning? The warning, because this is telling us that they already saw something and it could possibly be coming, okay? This is what comes before the warning. The watch comes before the warning. We hear this a lot with hurricanes too, because hurricanes are big where we live, okay? Especially even closer to the water. So here's a picture of a tornado. There are people that follow these things. You know that, right? You've heard of that, right? Yeah? Pretty crazy. I don't know that I want to be that close, because what if it, I mean, it's coming, no matter where you're at. So does anybody have questions about those? No? All right, we're going to jump into hurricanes. So hurricanes are pretty big. Like I said, where we are, we've had a few come through the past few years. So where I'm originally from in Pennsylvania, I'm not used to the hurricane stuff. I'm just used to a lot of snow, a few blizzards here and there, but not this hurricane mess. So hurricanes come from the where? Where do they form? So in the water, right? They form in the water. And there's a few that are some tropical storms, I should say, that are out there now. Sally, maybe. Anybody watch the news, the weather in here? No? Sally?
This morning, Sally was a hurricane 2 that was touching Alabama.
Okay. And is there Teddy?
They were talking about Sally.
Oh, they only talked about Sally? Okay. But there were a few. I think the last that I had heard, there were 4 of them. And I don't know if some of them dissipated, like weakened. And then there were some that were still possibly building up. I know there was one that was just formed off the coast of Africa, but we've seen what hurricanes can do, right? So here is a picture that kind of goes over the formation here of the hurricane. It shows you the inside of the hurricane. So when there's talk of a hurricane, the big word that they like to use is the eye, right? Because wherever the eye hits, that's where there's going to be the what? The most what? What do you think? Where the eye of the hurricane hits, that's going to be the most what? Most what? The worst part, right? The eye. The worst part. So the eye, okay, so this is composed of the dense clouds that contain the strongest winds in the storm. So that is the worst part of the hurricane. So wherever the eye lands, that's the worst part of the hurricane, okay? Not that any part of it is good, but the eye is the worst, okay? Because as you can see, as it gets further out, the rain is different the further out from the eye. So places can still get strong winds, they can still get lots of rain, but the closer to the eye, the stronger the winds are going to be and a lot more rain. So the eye is the center. You read that it was the calmest, but what's it bringing? Huh? All the wind and rain. So when we talk about it being the calmest and warmest part, though, that's where it's going to what? What's it going to do is it as it expands outward. You said bring all the wind and rain, so it's going to what? Hmm? You said it. Okay? So the eye wall, these are the thick clouds that surround the eye with the most intense winds of the hurricane. So you said calmest because of the actual eye itself, but really what's around it is the what? The worst part, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So that's really what I was getting at. So there are stages of a hurricane, okay? Tropical disturbance, tropical depression, tropical storm, and a hurricane. So this is what I was just talking about with the ones that are forming. So the tropical disturbance is the first stage, which consists of a mass of thunderstorms that have only a slight wind circulation. The depression is the whirling area of low pressure and storm activity with sustained winds up to 38 miles per hour. The storm is sustained winds over 39 miles per hour. So this is the stage when a storm is actually given its name. And then a hurricane, it becomes a hurricane when the winds are over 74 miles per hour, okay? So up here shows us a picture of the life cycle of a North Atlantic hurricane. So we see some things up here. What are these? We learned about these. What are they? Fronts, okay? So if we've got blue triangles, what are we talking about? A cold front. If we got red semicircles, what are we talking about? A warm front. If we've got red semicircles and blue triangles opposite sides, stationary. And then if we've got purple, occluded, right? Okay, so we see some of those mixed in. We've got stationary, over here, cold, warm. All right, so when hurricanes happen, there's what is known as a storm surge, okay? They'll talk about this a lot on the Weather Channel or the news when hurricanes are happening. So this is the greatest damage from hurricanes. They come from this storm surge. So this is a combination of high tide and water that's pushed onshore by the strong winds of the hurricane. So it can produce surges anywhere from 1 to 5.4 plus meters, okay? So when it's talking about high tide versus low high tide is when the water is what? If you're sitting on the beach, is there going to be a lot more sand in high tide or the water coming at you? The water coming at you, okay? And in a low tide, that means the water is going to be farther away from you, right? Okay? So when we're talking about high tide and water, high tide's already closer to us, to the land, and then it rushes in, okay? So most deaths from hurricanes are by drowning due to the actual storm surge. So this is a picture. What do you see up here? Is that before or after the hurricane? After the hurricane, okay? All right, the next thing, and we've talked about this, but now we're going to talk about it for a hurricane, is the difference between a watch and a warning, okay? So a watch is issued several days before landfall, and the warning is issued 24 hours before the landfall, okay? So the watch is getting us ready, and the warning's telling us that it is happening, okay? So above this, you see how hurricanes are classified according to their intensity, and they use the Saffir-Simpson scale. So you've got 5 categories. So you might hear that the hurricane is a Cat 1, a Cat 2, a Cat 3, a Cat 4, a Cat 5. Then you'll see what the winds are for those specific category of hurricanes, the surge, the storm surge, and then the type of damage that can be done. Now, the last hurricane that we have, and you can definitely tell a difference. So if you were here in Greenville area, right, we've gotten some damage here, but if you started traveling towards the, more towards the coast, okay, you started to see more and more damage, okay? My husband and I drove towards New Bern, and the further we got towards going to the beach, you saw more damage as you went, because it was closer to the water. And where does the storm surge happen? Water, okay? So this is going to talk about naming and forecasting hurricanes. So in 1953, names were female and in ABC order. In 1979, they began alternating male and female names, and the list of names was created by the World Meteorological Society, and names are recycled after every 6 years, okay? The exception is if a hurricane was particularly destructive or noteworthy, the name will be retired and replaced on the list, and they get replaced with another name beginning with the same letter. So whenever storms start to form, remember I said they form when they become a what? What do they form when they become? Where does Mrs. Ibarra want to be? Tropical storm, right? Okay, so that is when they become named, okay? Hurricane season in the Northeast US is June to November. Okay, September is a really big month for hurricanes. And the interaction between ocean water temperatures and warm air masses contributes to the formation of the hurricane during the late summer. So we kind of had a hurricane already this year, right, in August, early August. But a lot of times we don't see them happening until September. So a lot of times you'll see maps that look like this. And these are how they track the hurricanes. A lot of them look like spaghetti models. And there's all different ones that you can look at. This is just showing us a graph of the number of tropical storms and hurricanes. Okay, the hurricanes are blue and the tropical cyclones are the red. And this was from 1950 to 2011. So where do you see some differences? Oh, y'all can't see the years down there. Which ones kind of stand out? Yep, this guy right here. And that guy, because y'all can't see it, that was in around 2006. Okay. And then you might see some little guys. But that one stands out the most to me too. All right, does anybody have questions?